Hello everybody, and welcome back. It is I, Professor Quibblefingers, and welcome to my humble abode. Come, take a seat. Miss Lakshmana will be around soon with some rather fine cheese on toast. I managed to get some tiger bread in, and some of that 24 munch Cornish cruncher. It's rather delicious. Now, today we're having another ramble, and while I was tempted to talk about one of the most audacious bank heists in all of history, in which North Korean hackers almost stole $1 billion worth of currency from, I believe it was the government of Bangladesh, and they were only stopped by a sheer coincidence, I would have to do a little more reading on the subject. It's fascinating, but I'm not quite there yet. And so today, I thought I would tell a rather interesting story. I'm going back to Dungeons and Dragons lore again, simply because I like buttering about it. Now, you see, my favourite creature in all of Dungeons and Dragons is a horror known as the Astral Dreadnought. For those of you who have never seen it, it is essentially a giant crab with a snake tail, a mouthful of teeth, and a giant eye in the middle of its head. It is a vile thing, and it lives in the depths of the Astral Sea, and is considered one of the most dangerous things you could ever encounter. But where did it come from? Why does it have the powers it does? How did it get there? And how is it linked to how the very first demons arrived in the D&D multiverse? Well, allow me to explain. Sit back, take a seat, collect yourself a slice of toast, and let us begin. In the beginning of time, Ao, the overgod of the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse, created the crystal spheres. These are giant, crystal spheres that surround each and every part of the multiverse and keep them separate. It is, however, possible to move between them through something known as the Astral Sea. Now, some of you may have encountered this before. It is essentially an ocean formed of dreams, thoughts, anything that could be considered insubstantial. But that wasn't its original intention. What the Astral Sea was originally is largely lost to time, but it was first used as the graveyard of the gods. Now, gods exist across all of fantasy. It's, where have you gone for fantasy thing not found gods? But in this case, something rather interesting happened. When a god loses all of their worshippers, this god dies. They lose all of their power, and they're essentially removed from their crystal spheres. They end up usually as a giant drifting corpse that travels through space. Imagine sort of like a big, vaguely humanoid piece of rock just drifting through the ether. Now, of course, the corpse of a god is extremely valuable, and as mortals became more powerful and learned how to control magic better, they began to explore the astral, moving between realms which caused problems for the gods, of course, and perhaps more importantly, they began to discover the corpses of these gods. If a god can die, perhaps they can be killed, perhaps someone else can replace them. Thoughts began to crystallize in the minds of mortals. Unpleasant ones. and so stepped in a being known as Tharizdun. Now, Tharizdun is rather a weird creature. He is something beyond a conventional god. He's almost an elder evil. But back then he wasn't so bad. He was more. His main purpose was to prevent mortals from entering the Astral. This, of course, was becoming more and more difficult, and so he sought a way to permanently close the Astral to mortal contamination, shall we say. He went searching for powerful magics, ways to seal it off. And in his search, he came across something unusual. He made contact with the Oberifs. Now, the Oberifs are not exactly the nicest of creatures. If you know much about astrophysics, and I must admit I am no expert on the subject, the belief is eventually that the universe will expand and then contract back in on itself, reaching a point of singularity, which will eventually detonate and create another universe. It's a repeating cycle that goes on and on and on and on and on. And due to the way time works, it simultaneously happens across all universes, or multiverses even, at the same time. That's where the Oberifs come in. There was a previous version of the multiverse, so long ago that, well, I can't even think in numbers that big. They were the last remaining denizens of a dying multiverse. Absolutely disgusting they were. If you've ever read the description of Terry Pratchett's creatures from the dungeon dimensions, we're talking a horse which has been buried alive, dug up, had its eyes replaced with arms and its teeth replaced with anvils, and then covered in tentacles. That's just the start of what we're looking at. Now, the Oberifs were the last surviving members of their species. They were, all of them in their own way, unique, horrible creatures. Each of them had in fact become the ruler of its own pocket dimension, linked to the collapsing husk of this dying multiverse. Beings of pure entropy, hatred, and malign influence. And they knew that their time was running out. If they couldn't find a way to survive what was essentially the end of the multiverse, they were done. And so, at the point at which reality collapsed, they reached out into the darkness, and they were able to make contact with a being from our universe. That being was Tharizdun. Now, as mentioned before, Tharizdun was looking for a way to close off the astral sea to mortals, and he believed that by using the power of the Oberifs, these beings of pure entropy, he might be able to do so. And so, via their guidance from beyond the veil, he created what could only be described as a shard of pure negative energy, It's about as bad as you could think. It was. I mean, how else are you supposed to contract beings made of pure entropy? It would be very difficult. This shard eventually crystallized and formed a point in space and time. Pure entropy, pure negative energy, pure evil. Undiluted, purest, blackest evil. The shard of elemental evil. This shard essentially created a portal through which the Oberifs came, pouring through directly into the mind of Tharizdun. Now, Tharizdun, being a god and an elder, even all that sort of thing, he could create reality with a snap of his fingers. He could change things, he could create, he could destroy. And with his mind, under the influence of these beings of pure evil, he birthed the Oberifs. And in the process, he was driven mad. Well, more mad than a being who was literally a giant eye floating through space. At the same time, he lost control of the shard of elemental evil. It fell through space and time, punching holes as it went. It fell through 666 layers, 666 universes, corrupting each one as it passed through it. With each one corrupted, the Oberifs moved in and took over. They became the first demons, as Tharizdun's experiment created the Abyss, the birthplace of all demons. But he had been right in one thing. The power of the Oberifs granted him the ability and the will to find a way to close the Astral Sea. He would create beings to guard the colour portals, if nothing else. Giant monsters. The Astral Dreadnoughts. Each one is an ultimate predator. It's the size of a dragon. It has claws, which are both capable of crushing a living being or severing the silver thread that one might use if you were to astrally project. Oh, and for those interested, if you ever listen to some of these weirdos on television, on the radio, and books all talking about astral projection, while it is something that dates back to Hindu mythology, 90% of the rules for it, including all the stuff about the silver thread, actually comes from Dungeons & Dragons lore. So you can wipe their pretentious little noses in that. In any case, the Astral Dreadnoughts were released unto the universe. They are utterly devastating. They cannot age, they can't die. They are capable of killing most things in combat. Anything they can't kill in combat, well, they got two different ways of negating it. First is their eye. It is this eye which allows them to turn off magic. Anything they look at loses its magical abilities. And worse still is their mouth. If you are consumed by an astral dreadnought, you are immediately teleported into an extra-dimensional dungeon. A vast, empty holding cell from which you cannot escape. An entire fortress out of space and time within the guts of the dreadnought. Every dreadnought has a colour pool it watches over, making them incredibly dangerous to get past. Now, it is true that some dreadnoughts have died, or been killed at least, and in fact they are incredibly territorial, and will kill each other at a moment's notice, although most fights usually end in a draw. But yes, they will destroy just about anything that they come across. And they have one rather unique link to other parts of the realms. You see, Tharizdun, in his madness and his accidental creation of the Abyss, he was eventually defeated, not by raw power, as there was nothing at that point which could defeat him. He was far too strong. How do you fight a being that's gone mad and has the power of an entire collapsed universe pouring out of his mind? Or essentially, he was trapped within a prison of his own dreams. A chained oblivion. He sleeps forever, locked in a cage of his own mind, and hopefully will slumber forevermore. But his dreams, they occasionally spawn interesting things. Occasionally, scraps of his mind will reach out, and where he once created Astral dreadnoughts, he will occasionally spawn one of the most iconic monsters in Dungeons & Dragons history, the Beholder. Beholders are the nightmares of a mad god, made in the image of the creatures designed to keep mortals from entering the Astral Sea. And it is said that if Tharizdun were to ever wake up, every Astral dreadnought, every Beholder, will become a portal for his madness. He will be able to reach through their eyes, and with it, snuff out the world. I suggest we have a very long drink at this point, and sit back and enjoy our toast. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Cheerio!